Hello everyone and welcome back to another board game review. Last time we reviewed a board game that was based on a TV show. This time we're going to do one that's based on a very famous movie. If you haven't guessed by the materials here, we're going to be reviewing a board game based on the 1975 blockbuster Jaws. If you haven't guessed already, I'm a little obsessed with the movie. Got a couple extra shirts other than the one I'm wearing, and plus I've got the shark tattooed on my back. As you can see, I've got a nice little collection of books, CDs, and DVDs of the movies, particularly the first two. Third and fourth didn't really care for, but that's for another review, which I'll be probably doing later on this summer. Anyways, last year it was announced, or I heard that the company Ravensburger was doing a board game version of Jaws, and I was hearing good things about it, and found it at Target, and decided I had to have it. So we'll go ahead and get started and open up the box and take a look. So as we look at the game, the box of course has the shark from the posters on it, as well as Chrissy, the swimmer. Open up the box, and before we look at the contents, inside or around the outside of the box, they actually put a lot more detail on it. The bottom has obviously image of the game pieces and everything scattered around. If you look at the sides, normally the sides of this a game box is going to be blank, but they've got the orca on this side, a shark on this side, a buoy on that side, and then Chrissy swimming on that side. So you open up the box. First you get the two-sided game board. First side has Amity Island on it. The second side looks like nothing right now, but this is for playing on the orca for the second half. Basically the game has two halves. First part, like in the movie, takes place on the Amity Island. Second half takes place out on the orca. Leave this aside and look at the other contents. You have the little booklet for how to play the game. You have what's called a shark tracker. This is used by the person or the player who is pretending to be the shark, and it's used by them to keep track of where the shark is located. We'll touch on that more a little bit. We also have game cards. Some of these are used in part one, like the Amity event cards, which we'll go into here in a minute. We have the gear cards for the players on the orca, and we have the surface cards for when the game's played. The second half of the game's played on the orca, as well as the shark ability. These are also used for on the orca. We'll go through the cards here in a little while. You then have the player cards, as well as the tiles for the second half of the game for the orca. You have other pieces for the second half of the orca that's played on the orca, as well as special dice, which we'll go through. And then we have all the pieces for take place in part one on Amity Island, which we'll go over here in a second. And here's where, and these here are some clips here for the player cards, which we'll go over in a second. It's an extra bag, but if you look inside, this is where they really paid attention to detail. The pattern that they put on the inside, this is the pattern from Murray Hamilton's suit in a couple of the scenes in the movie. Basically at the beginning of the movie, when he's trying to convince Chief Brody not to close the beaches, and then later on when they're in front of the vandalized billboard, and he's still arguing about not wanting to close the beaches, but he had a suit on, had this pattern of anchors all over it, so they actually put that on the inside of the box, which I thought was a really interesting little bit of detail from the movie that they added in on this. So this is the setup for Act 1, or Part 1, of the game of Jaws. You have the map of Amity Island. There are 4 ocean sections on the outside of the board. Then around the perimeter of the island there are 8 sections. 4 of them are beaches, and 2 are Quint's Dock and Hooper's Dock. And then there's up here is the in this space is the mayor's office. Down here is the Amity Police Department, and in the center section is the reserve area for the barrels that Quint gets throughout the game, on this part anyway. And basically, you also have the 3 cards for the 3 heroes of the island, Brody, Hooper, and Quint, and their equipment, which we'll get to here in a moment. You have the shark tracker and the card for the shark, and you have 4 special items that the shark can use, as whoever plays the shark can use those once in each game. You have 16 swimmer tokens. One of them is only used if directed by the Amity event cards, which we'll get to here in a second. That one is Michael Brody, Chief Brody's son, and we'll get to that here in a moment. And then there are the Amity event cards. So basically for each round, basically the shark, and this is where the shark, whoever plays the shark, basically keeps track of their location on this sheet here. Basically they choose what space on the oceans, the water spaces that they're going to start on. There's 12 different spaces that the shark can be on. Of course, obviously the shark can't be in the center of the island, but the shark starts out at that location, and then the cards are shuffled for the Amity event cards. Then you turn them over, and there are special instructions here. This line here basically tells you what beaches to put swimmers at. So there's 2 ends, which means you put 2 swimmers in the North Beach section. And there's a W, which means you put 1 swimmer in the West Beach section. Below that, there are instructions here. It says here if the shark's swimmer track is at 3 or lower, in other words, if the shark's eaten 3 or less people, then we can also put swimmers on these 3 beaches, S, E, and W. So south, east, and west. So now we have swimmers, 1 swimmer at East Beach, 1 at South Beach, 2 at West, and 2 at North. The shark then does their move. Whoever plays the shark has their move. Basically, and each of these cards actually tells how the shark can move throughout the game. In this case, the shark can move 1 space, or it can there's up to 3 moves that the shark can do throughout the game, or throughout this round. 1 move would be to move 1 space. Another move would be to eat a swimmer. So basically, say the shark, and this is normally you don't have this out on the board because the shark, of course, is underwater and hidden from the other players. But say the shark starts out here at 1. Possible move would be good to go from 1 to the North Beach and then eat 2 swimmers. The move would be 1 move. Both swimmers would be a second and third move. And then of course, shark could have eat the swimmers, and then the marker would get moved up to 2 for 2 swimmers eaten by the shark. The shark also has, and that's why this book closes like that, so that obviously other players cannot see what's going on with the shark. The shark also has some abilities where if they play this card and they're at a beach, but the shark can eat all the swimmers at the beach in one move. And there's a speed burst where if this is played, the shark can move up to 3 spaces in one move. Evasive moves. In this one, the shark does not set off motion sensors, which we'll go over here in a moment for that round. And then another one is the shark stays out of sight and is invisible to Hooper's fish finder and Brody's binoculars, which we'll get to here in a moment. So after the shark has done their move, Brody, Hooper, and Quint are played by the other 1 to 3 players. You can have 2 players, one playing the shark, the other one playing the 3 heroes of the game. Or you can have, up to 3 people, 1 each playing Brody, Hooper, and Quint. So for Brody, and Brody, Hooper, and Quint, they can do their moves in any order. It doesn't really matter what order they go into in each game. But then Brody, he is symbolized, of course, by this little figure in black on the police station. He always, in the game, Brody always starts out at the police station. Hooper in his boat starts out at Hooper's dock, and the Quint starts out at his boat over on the east dock, or on the east dock, west dock, whatever you want to call them. So Brody can take up to 4 actions. He can move 1 space. He can rescue a swimmer. If Brody goes to a beach, say West Beach, he can remove one of these swimmers out of the water, get them out of the water and out of harm's way from the shark. And of course the swimmer would then go back to the reserve here for swimmers. Brody can go to the center section, and in 1 move he can pick up a barrel. The move to that section would be 1 move, and then the barrel would be another. He can also go over to either Hooper's dock or Quint's dock and drop off the barrel. Dropping off the barrel would be 1 move, moving to it, that space would be a move as well. Brody also has binoculars, which he can use once in a round. Basically, if he is on one of the beach areas, he can play the binoculars on that beach that he's at. Well, in this case, it'd be West Beach. And if the shark is in that beach space, then the shark, it makes itself known, and then the other players can hone in on targeting the shark. Quint, if he's at either the mayor's office or the Amity Police Department, he can also do what is called closing the beach. Now, the only way he can close the beach is if there are no swimmers on the beach. So say there's no swimmers on South Beach, he can go ahead and close the beach. And then what will happen is, until basically the beach will remain closed until you get another event card. Like say this one here, where it calls for a swimmer to go on South Beach. Well, South Beach is closed, so instead of putting a swimmer there, the sign is flipped around to say opening soon. Then the next time you get another Amity event card where a swimmer is supposed to go there, you don't put the swimmer there, you just remove the beach closed sign, and the beach is now open for swimmers again. Our next hero in the movie is Hooper. Hooper can also take up to 4 actions on each round. Since he's on a newer boat, he can move up to 2 spaces in 1 move. So say he's here at the west dock here, he can go 1 and 2 for 1 move. He can also go to one of the beaches and pick up 1 swimmer. He can also pick up any of the barrels either at his dock or any barrels that have been left out in the water to get those over to Quint. He then delivers barrels over to Quint on his boat. So Hooper can also use this little fish finder. So say he's out here on section or area 1 and he plays the fish finder. And what will happen is if the shark is in this space, the player playing the shark must say that yes, they are in that space and move their token there. If the shark is in an adjacent space, they can say that they're nearby. So in this case, if the shark is like in Area 2, North Beach, Hooperstock, or Area 3, the shark can just say that they're nearby. They don't have to say where exactly, as long as they're not in Hooper space. The only time the shark would say that they're in Hooper space and move the pointer there is if they're in the same space as Hooper when the fish finder is played. If they're in one of the nearby spaces, they just say nearby, and then that clues in the players as to where the shark might be located, what beach the shark might be heading to, that sort of thing. Also throughout the game, Quint is on his boat, the Orca, and he departs from the dock over on the east side of the island. And unlike Hooper, Hooper has a boat that can go up to 2 spaces per round, or per move. Quint's boat, the Orca, only goes 1 space per move. He can't go 2 spaces. If Quint goes to one of the beach spaces, he can rescue one of the swimmers and get one of the swimmers out of the water, like Hooper and Brody. He can also pick up any of the barrels around that are placed in the water out around the board, or if he's at a dock, he can pick up all the barrels at that particular dock. And also, once per round, he can launch one of the barrels that he has. Quint starts out with 2 barrels, and then through either picking them up at the docks, left there by Brody, or if Hooper picks up one of the barrels that's left out on the game board, Quint will can pick those up there one at a time as he goes around the board. So the barrels, Quint can launch the barrels one at a time, and he can launch them into either the space he's at or one of the adjacent spaces. So say here at his dock area here, adjacent space would be, or he can drop a barrel here in his space, or one of the adjacent beaches, South Beach or East Beach, or out here on the ocean area. Now when he drops the barrel into that space, if the shark is in that space, the shark actually gets tagged. And that's the whole point of Game 1 for the three people playing the heroes, is to get 2 barrels into the shark to end part 1. The shark, meanwhile, is swimming around, obviously trying to get as many swimmers as possible. Once the shark gets up to 9 swimmers eaten, that ends the game and the shark wins Act 1. Now, if Quint drops a barrel in the water and misses, so the shark isn't, say, in area 4 when Quint drops the barrel in there, what happens is that barrel now becomes a fish finder or fish detector. When the shark is moving through around on the board, if it goes through one of the spaces where there's a barrel left in the water, the player playing the shark has to tell the other players, that they went through that section that had the fish finder. So say the shark went from 3 to 4 to 2 and then to East Beach. He wouldn't have the player playing the shark would not say, what order they've gone in. Like if you hit one of the detectors and you eat a swimmer, you wouldn't say what order you went through, but you would say that in addition to eating the swimmer at East Beach, you also set off the detector at Area 4 or in Section 4. And that would tell the other players, again, an idea of where the shark's located. The only time the shark actually reveals their location is when Quint drops a barrel into the same space as the shark. Hooper uses a fish finder and the shark's in that exact location, or if Brody uses binoculars and the shark is at that beach. Those are the only 3 times that the shark actually reveals his exact location. Other times the players are basically trying to determine where the shark is located and basically zero in on what's happening. That's why the people playing the 3 heroes, they can go in any order that they want to basically determine where the shark's located. Again, the whole point of part 1 to win the game for the 3 heroes is to get 2 barrels into the shark. The whole game of the shark, though, of course, is to eat as many swimmers as possible. Once the shark hits 9 swimmers, or the shark gets 2 barrels in him, at that point the Act 1 is over and things go on to Act 2. One thing to note too on moving the players around on the board, when you move around on the board you have to go to adjacent spaces where there's an edge, not across corners. So like if I'm on section 4 or area 4 over here, I can't go straight to East Beach here. I have to either go through 8 and then East Beach, or up here to 2 and then East Beach. So you can't go from corner to corner, you have to go adjacent sides like that. So once you get 9 swimmers eaten or 2 barrels into the shark, obviously, like I said, that's when the part 1 is over, and we move on to part 2. And that also is where on the shark, how many swimmers get eaten determines other items for part 2, which we'll go over here in just a moment. So this is the setup for Act 2 or Part 2 of the game of Jaws. This part takes place on the Orca. There are 8 tiles for 8 different sections of the Orca, 4 on each side of the Orca. The players, the little figures from the first part are reused in this game, or in this section of the game. And basically this section starts out with the players on any section of the boat that they want to start out on. The cards from part 1 are turned over, and they actually have, like on the first part, they have the instructions here on how to play the second part for each round. Each player has a gear card that they have that has their weapons on here, or 2 of the weapons that they get on here. They also have a target on here where they can target where they want to aim their weapon at. From part 1, on the chart on the Act 1 side, depending on how many swimmers the shark gets, that determines how many shark ability cards and how many crew gear cards get dispersed. Basically, the more swimmers that got eaten, the more abilities the shark's going to have, and the less crew gear or weapons that the crew's going to have to fight the shark. In the event that the shark gets less swimmers before it gets 2 barrels in them, the crew's going to have more crew gear or weapons for the shark against the shark, while the shark won't have as many special abilities to use throughout the game, or throughout this part of the game. So once that's all determined, the shark card gets turned over. The shark starts out at 0 injuries. Basically, once the shark gets 18 hits against it, the shark is basically considered killed and the game's over, and the heroes win the game. In the event that the 3 heroes are either all killed off or the Orca is completely destroyed, then the shark wins the game. So say like I said, the crew gear, this is in addition to the gear that the crew gets. So like I say, they get 5 crew gear cards after this deck is shuffled. Cards are distributed, then the crew basically gets to decide who gets what for their gear. Anything listed as ammo, that's basically you'd want to give that to whichever player has a gun in their possession. That way they can basically use this instead of using up the only weapon that they have for the gun. And all the weapons have three things. There's a fist up here, which basically means you have to have be in the same space as where the shark resurfaces to use that weapon. The fishing, or if it has like a hook symbol, that gets attached to the shark. You don't lose that, that gets attached to the shark, and then every round the shark has this attached to it. The shark loses, or it gets injured by 1 point, and loses, or gets 1 point closer to getting killed off. If it has a target on it, basically that player with that weapon can be anywhere on the orca, and any one of the spaces where the shark might resurface. And then of course there's the shark ability cards, which gives the shark like extra strength for damaging the boat or moving around, that kind of thing, or what it's able to do for each round. Like those special cards that the shark had in the first round, once these are used in that part, it's discarded and can't be reused. So once everyone, the players are in their position on the orca, 3 resurface cards are taken from the shuffled deck and placed here at the bottom of the board. So basically, these will determine the 3 areas where the shark is allowed to resurface on for this particular round. So for part A, he's going to, or for section A, C, and B. So these are 3 areas where the shark has the ability to resurface. The shark then determines where he's going to resurface. So let's say the shark decides he's going to show up at, I'll leave it up to you, I'll leave it anonymous for now. So the shark basically determines where they're going to resurface. Brody, Hooper, and Quint then determine where, and the shark also at this point also chooses what shark ability card they're going to play, if they're going to play one. And then Brody, Hooper, and Quint determine what they can do. They can move up to 2 spaces, either at right angle or straight across, to get to where they want to go. And they basically use their weapons to determine what they are, how they're going to attack the shark in that round. It's like Brody, he has a pistol. Say he has a pistol, so he could be up here on. Well, Brody can be back here, and say he thinks the shark's going to show up here at B. So Brody puts his target at that section. Hooper has a rifle, and so he decides he's going to aim at B as well. Quint, say he has a machete. He wants to, he has to be in this space to use that machete. So he would have to move 2 spaces and put his target at B, or wherever he wants he thinks the shark's going to show up. At which point, the shark then reveals what section they're going to show up at, which is at B. So what happens there is each player has, each weapon shows how many dice the player rolls for that particular weapon. And each of these dice, there's marked by little bursts or whatever. There's 1 blank, and it looks like 3 single and 2 doubles for each of the dice. So for the pistol, Hooper would just roll 2 dice, and he rolled a 3. Or excuse me, Brody rolled a 3 for the pistol. Now, and you basically discard the 2 that's not up to make it a little easier to play that. So you rolled a 3. Shark has an evade value for that space of 2. So you subtract 2 from the 3 that is rolled for that weapon, which means the shark takes 1 hit. Since Hooper also, we'll go ahead and do the other 2, because Hooper rolled, for the rifle, he gets 2 shots, plus there's a bonus shot on here. So Hooper has 2, plus the bonus shot, that's 3, minus that 2 shark evade value. That means the shark takes another hit from Hooper. So Quint, using his machete, he rolls 2 dice, plus he gets a bonus according to the weapon. So there's 2 rolled, plus that 1, so that's a score of 3, minus the 2. So Quint has hit the shark as well once. So in that round, the shark has taken 3 hits out of a possible 18. And now, what happens is the shark is able to attack the orca. The 2 dice that are on this card, basically that determines how many dice the shark's allowed to roll to attack that particular space on the orca. So the shark rolls a 3, which means, now these targets are down here, each space has 2 numbers on it. There's a 2, the lower value is what's needed to damage that space. The higher value is what is needed to destroy that space. So when the shark attacks here, he rolled a 3. Need only 2 to damage it. That section of the orca is flipped over. So now this section is damaged. And the other thing that happens too, because there's this edge here and here, this water here, or this space here, is now adjacent to these 2 spaces. So if you're doing one of the hands-on weapons like the machete, Quint could have been here or here, and been able to use that from there. So the shark, if it attacks an area of the boat, he can also attack either of these spaces if this area is damaged, because basically these are now considered adjacent to this space here, or this water space here. Also, if a crew member is on that space when it's damaged, they are actually knocked into the water. And at that point, and this is where the crew can get injured, the shark then is allowed to take 1 roll of each dice and attack one of the crew members that's in the water. So in that case, shark rolls a 1. Quint, I don't have the rig clips on here, but Quint would then take 1 hit, and once a crew member gets 6 hits against them, that crew member is killed off. Now, then also in the event too, that when the shark or the space is damaged, there's just only 1 number there, and that's the number that's needed to completely destroy that section. So either to destroy the section, either hit the high number on the undamaged side, or just hit the number that's on the damaged side, and then that tile is removed. This section now is would be considered completely underwater. And at that point, in order to get out of the water, getting out of the water basically is considered 2 steps. So basically, you wouldn't be able to go from here to here, or from the water to one of these spaces. You can only climb out to one of the adjacent spaces, because basically climbing out of the water takes 2 spaces. So once either the shark is killed off, or the orca is destroyed, or all 3 of the heroes are killed off, then the game is over. If the heroes are killed off or the orca is completely destroyed, the shark wins. If the shark is killed off, then whoever's left living of the heroes, they win. So it's a little complicated, a little more complicated than the Act 1, but once you do a couple rounds, it usually goes, it's easy to catch on to, and it goes pretty quickly. Interesting thing with this too is on this side where they some of the detail that they put into this game. The other side obviously had nice detail on the island and everything, but here on the orca, some of the detail, there's a scene where just before Brody tells Quint that he needs a bigger boat, where Hooper's seen up on the deck of the bridge playing solitaire. And here on the undamaged orca, they have a game of solitaire set up here. When that section gets flipped over and is damaged, the cards are now askew and scattered about some. Then when that section is actually removed, here in the water you see playing cards floating around in the water, where basically that section's gone underwater and now the cards are floating on the surface. So there's a lot of detail that they've put into this game that they've pulled from the movie and everything, and it's fun. Like I said, you play the first couple rounds, each act. It takes, and you kind of once you get the feel of it, the rest of the game goes pretty quickly. So that's a look at the board game version of Jaws. There's been a couple other games based on Jaws in the past. When I was a kid, there was one. It was a large plastic shark with a bunch of junk in its mouth that you had to fish out before the shark snapped its jaws shut. There was another one that was it's actually a video game put out by, I think it was Nintendo. I can't really remember because unfortunately we had Atari at home. We didn't have Nintendo. But anyways, the board game version, I think it's an awesome version of the game. You know, it takes a little bit getting used to, you know, when you first play it, you know, but once you do a couple rounds of both of the stages, or acts, or whatever you want to call it, you know, it's a fun game. It's a nice strategy game. You know, it's probably not for little kids. You know, little kids probably don't, you know, give them nightmares about a shark eating kids or swimmers or whatnot. But anyways, it's a great game. A lot of fun, a lot of detail put into it, and you know, it's a good time to pass the time with friends and family. So thanks for watching this board game review. I've got a few more that I'm going to be doing probably, so hit the like button, subscribe, comment, you know, do your thing. So take it easy, have a good one, stay safe.